Greetings, everybody. Wesley Pepper here. Welcome to the Lexcia podcast. This is episode this is episode 215, and I'm laughing because I again noticed that I got my numbering wrong. I'm sure I said 215 for the last episode. Yeah, but I counted, and I'm sure I said this last time as well. And that is, but I'm close to 215, 200. Yeah, let's just say it's 215 episodes. Yeah, my apologies for that, man. But yeah, I do this work on my own, so and numbers sometimes it gets overwhelming. But anyway, enough about that. Yeah, it's this is the third episode for the year. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you don't mind, I can smash that like and subscribe button. I will appreciate it. Today we're talking everything with acting. We're talking to Menzi Mbuli. I was actually supposed to talk to him late last year. Ahmed, there was a whole lot of this happen. I know there's also flooding in KZN, and that also there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened. But he's here this morning. So first and foremost, my brother, good morning. Welcome.
Morning, Wes. Thank you so much for having me on your platform. I hope we have a wonderful discussion today.
Yeah, sure. You know, it's interesting because I remember I was setting up last year and I was looking forward to talking, man, but then something happened. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking your story. You know that late last year you did win the Hollywood Bets Youth Business Award, but we'll get to that a little bit later. I thought we can just build up to that. So let's first start off. You are an actor, director. These days, these days in the arts, everyone wears many hats.
Yeah.
But I know the core is acting. So just give us a breakdown, my brother, man. Tell us exactly what you do, and we'll unpick it bit by bit.
Well, briefly, I started Wes as an actor in the industry, but I don't know if you know, but my father is a professional actor, is a professional theater director. He also has produced many shows that he has toured the world with. But incidentally, I wasn't exposed as much to my father's work as I probably a lot of people thought I was, because I grew up with separate parents. But as I grew older, I actually got more exposed to my father's work, visiting his productions, watching him perform at places like the Hilton Arts Festival. And I think for me, that initial exposure really drew me to the world of performance. It drew me to the world of theater. And incidentally, I ended up spending some time with him when my mother got an opportunity to go and study overseas, to do her master's in education at the Bowling Green State University in Ohio, in the United States of America. So when I spent time with my father, he then directed me to Professor Debbie Latke, where I ended up studying performance and acting at DUT. And it was interesting for me because I was already dabbling with performance quite organically, not even just because my father was an actor, because I wasn't exposed as much to my father's work. Because bear in mind, during that time when I was coming up, sort of like 11, 10, 13, 14, 15, my teens, my father was touring the world at that time. So at any given time, it would be in Australia, it would be in Europe, he would be in America, and he would literally be on the road. So I got bits and pieces of it, and I naturally was drawn to this thing. So by the time I got into university, Wes, I was getting sort of like a more deeper sense of the world of acting, that it's kind of it's a profession. One needs to be skilled, one needs to study, one needs to read. And Professor Debbie Latke was sort of my initiation into the bigger world of acting. And when I graduated, I then got a chance to work overseas in a sort of an South African isiZulu Dutch mixed stage production of Oliver Twist, sort of like a musical stage adaptation. And then I stayed in Holland for about 3 to 4 months. And then when I came back, I then started working with my father. And I think for me, that was sort of my first initiation into the industry, because I really got to learn how to relate to a director, how to work on stage, how to, unpack scripts. So that's really where my acting started. I mean, from there, I started, trying to audition for different plays, working with directors like Neil Coppin, really exploring myself as an actor.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. Just before we move, just to on the influence of your dad. What exactly about his acting and about his career, like was the scent that influenced you the most, that got you into acting?
I really don't know what it was because I'll tell you one story. Because my parents were separated, my mother was always advocating me to spend time with my father, which I didn't really ever get time. So I could only really see him when he was in Pietermaritzburg because I actually grew up in Pietermaritzburg. So I remember one particular story. He was doing a workshop at the University of KZN. So my mother alerted me, and at the time, I think my mother didn't have a car. So my dad came to the house, picked me up, and then sort of drove me to the university. And yeah, there I was, actually just quite ignorant to what was going on. But it was him and Ellis Pearson in a room full of, it must have been about 35 drama students, first years, second years, and third years, and he was doing a very applied workshop that was sort of helping learners to understand how to use their bodies, how to use their voices. But very interestingly, as much as I was quite young, I remember him using a plastic bag to illustrate how the actor should learn how to become, how to learn how to observe objects and learn how to become just like what they are observing. So for me, it was very fascinating. And what is quite weird about it is that as much as I didn't grow up under the same roof as him, it fascinated me. And straight after that workshop, by the way, where we then moved outside where Ellis Pearson and my dad then performed Skadonk, which was their touring piece at the time, talking about this taxi driver with a very run-down vehicle living in the township. And again, there I was just completely fascinated by this world, you know. And I hadn't really made any decision. What do I want to do, or exactly where I want to go? I mean, I always used to say I want to be a scientist when I was coming up. I don't know why. I always said I wanted to be a scientist, but that fascinated me. And then again, later I got to see him at the Hilton Arts Festival. I think he was performing a piece called Makana, which was based on a Xhosa king who fought the British. And he was performing with Andrew Buckland on stage. And again, whereas I didn't know what was going on stage. In fact, a lot of 95% of the piece was just images. But these images were so captivating for me. They were just so mesmerizing for me. And I just remember sitting in this theater filled with white people and sitting next to my mother and just watching and just being so glued, being so drawn to this world to such an extent that incidentally was when I was involved in the church, because I grew up in the church, and somewhere along the way the church started requesting young people to put on plays that talk about Bible stories and so on.
Yeah,
And a lot of the stuff I was doing
yeah,
um, was actually stealing stuff from my father's work. So I was performing a lot of African characters that I saw him doing there, a lot of the humorous stuff he was doing on stage. And the church loved that. And we became quite popular in the church circles, as much as these skits were sort of like these little vignettes that touched on the Old Testament, that touched on the New Testament, that touched on contemporary issues that Christians were facing. But the way I was doing them, I was sort of imposing a Peggy Ellis style to the work that really made it quite interesting for them. And I think that's where I kind of became even more glued to what I was doing. And then one last thing I want to share is in matric. By the way, in matric, I still hadn't decided what I want to do. But I got a chance to be involved. A lot of these Model C schools have this thing called house plays. In fact, I get now invited to
yeah,
a lot of these private
yeah.
private schools to be a judge and adjudicator to one of these schools. One of the schools I got invited to was Kersney College a few years ago. So for Carter High, which is
Mhm.
where I went to do my schooling, I won an award for a play that I directed with about, I think it had like 30 actors or something like that. where I wrote the play, I directed the play, and it was also an African story. I think it was an interracial story between this colored girl and this black prince who were involved in a relationship that was quite controversial for the community as to how do these two races come together. So it became like a story of love, but an African story. And I had all my friends. I had my colored friend Leslie, who was the deputy head girl at the time, who played very beautiful girl who played the love interest, and then I had a friend of mine who incidentally now is a filmmaker, who had never acted before, and I casted him in that. And then I had an Afrikaans friend of mine who was sort of like the father pursuing this criminal who was living in this kingdom that my friend who was playing the prince was a part of. So from that experience, actually, my drama teacher, who knew my father quite well, knew his work, had seen his plays a couple of times,
Yeah.
sat down with me and said, she really thinks I've got this thing, and she thinks I should pursue it. And because I looked up to her, I just thought I want to give this thing a go. So that's how it really that's how it really started.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for breaking that. You really broke it down. Yeah. So if that happened in your matric year, so I assume that's a long time ago. You got into acting then. Now, as I mentioned early on, as artists, we always wear many hats. But I know you dabble in directing, acting, of course, and many other writing. Which of those skills came first, and which one did you harness first, and how did you sort of grow from there? You know, we said, okay, now I can write well, but maybe I should try my hand at directing or so forth.
I think whereas everything happened incidentally. I don't want to lie to you. That's really the honest truth. When we were in university, we wanted to be, like the begging Kwanis of this world, like my dad. We wanted to be like the Dr. John Guy. We wanted to be
Yeah.
like the Mongeni Gamers. We wanted to be like the Andrew Butlins. But the reality was, I can't speak for Cape Town, I can't speak for Joburg, but for Durban, there really isn't a lot of work, and we didn't know that when we were coming up. We just thought we really want to be
Yeah.
these skilled theater actors. We wanted to be these theater animals, and we wanted
Yeah.
to do as many auditions as possible. But the situation really in Durban is there's only one national theater in Durban called the Playhouse, and the Playhouse
Sure.
is not as busy as
Sure.
one would expect it to be. So initially, when I came back, because my first gig was the gig that I did in Holland, but when I came back and started working with my dad and finished up with that, I quickly realized there isn't a lot of work. So as much as I was working in between doing gigs, I actually found myself sitting at home 90% of the time. I found myself sitting at home waiting for an audition call. I found myself sitting at home twiddling my thumbs. And I then started thinking, how
Mm.
do I start writing my own work? I mean, this is with no funding, this is with no ideas to where to stage it. So I picked up an old conversation that I had with a friend of mine called Sabelo Ndlovu. He's actually now a film director. He works on a lot of the big series now on screen, like Uzalo, which is a famous KZN based soapy.
Yeah.
We were very close friends then, and
Yeah.
we would call each other a lot when I was in Holland. And one of the things we really, really spoke about was is we want to do an African two-hander that was based in the rural areas because we wanted to touch on those issues, but we wanted again the piece to sort of be influenced by the work we had seen Ellis do with Dad. So when we were sitting at home doing nothing, he would come over to my house and we'd sit down and we'd write and we'd workshop. I went away for some time, and remember, we're unemployed, so we have all the time in the world. So I would actually go to my
Yeah.
my grandparents' house. I'm actually there right now. And I would visit the local community, just interviewing people, recording interviews and trying to find stories. And later we emerged with the piece called Pockets of Knowledge, which was a story about these two boys who grow up in this village that gets invaded by this philanthropist who wants to change the village and build malls and all of this. And then we slowly start seeing how that divides the village. But the execution of the piece was really these stock characters and seeing these two actors transform into these many different characters. So that piece alone was really began to teach me how important it is for actors to not sit at home and create their own work, you know.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. It's like I get what you're saying. It's almost born out of necessity that you had understood. Like, in order for me to move forward, I need to master this and that. It's actually quite similar for visual art, for writing, even for musicians as well. At some point in our career, everybody figured out that you can't just focus on one skill. And just a side note on that, I actually think that sharpens us, our actual skill, our actual talent. Yeah, I think it sharpens the focus and actually grows, as helps us grow as artists.
Mm.
But like you were saying, all of those stuff happened during your college years. um Menzi M Creations, man. In the arts, like you mentioned, opportunities. You got to create your own opportunities. You also mentioned, like in KZN back then, there might not be that much work opportunities. There's always Joburg, Cape Town. So under what circumstances did Menzi M Creations was it conceptualized? Just explain to us, and then explain to us, how does the company work? In other words, what does it actually do? And then we'll break down, because I know you do a lot of schools, and I really want to get to that. You're working with kids and stuff. But let's start in the beginning. So how was it conceptualized? Who's part of the company? And yeah,
If you can give me an opportunity, Wes, just to back up a little bit, so I can give you a clear context as to what
yeah,
really,
please.
yeah, what really provoked that. You remember at this time, as I was working with Sabelo Ndlovu creating plays, we thought we could sustain ourselves just creating plays. I mean, because this is just a side example. We studied people like
Sure.
Stephen Stead, who creates pantomimes and creates imports plays from overseas and works with a big cast. And one of the things that really fascinated me about that is, as I was coming up and looking up to these older producers and directors, I was always wondering, how do they create work that constantly keeps them busy every single year? And I mean, as an older artist, I know
Yeah.
now it's slightly more complicated than that. I mean, a pantomime needs a lot of money. You've
Yeah.
got a band, you've got all these costumes and all these type of things. But as a model, I was looking at, how
Yeah.
do I sustain myself just creating plays? So that kind of took me down a
Mm.
rabbit hole where, at some point, just before I discovered Menzi M Creations, I was working at the Bat Center for a period of about 9 months. And my plan, and I literally didn't have any idea as to how I was going to make the money, but all I knew was that I want to create a piece of theater, whether I'm doing someone's play, whether I'm doing my own play, and we staging it once a month. We're
Yeah.
inviting an audience to come in, and we're using the money from the ticket sales to sustain this whole initiative. It was only halfway through the whole process where I
Yeah.
realized how incredibly difficult it was. The first piece was fine. We did a piece.
Yeah. Stressful.
It's very stressful. We did one piece which we've sort of filled up the venue, called The Shoeman. Then the next piece was meant to be a play that my friend wrote, called Amongst Men, which was dealing with an issue about traditional healers and some of the challenges that they face in terms of being recognized in modern society. And then somewhere along the way, I really began to struggle, because I was also teaching part time at the Playhouse. There was an initiative called Camp, which I later became the director of a couple of years later. But I had to kind of, Wesley, go back home and just sit in my own space, and really decide, what am I going to do? Because at that stage, just before I discovered
Yeah.
Menzi M Creations, I couldn't afford to pay my rent. I couldn't afford to take care of my car. I literally packed up everything that I had, because I was staying in Durban, and I had to go back to Pietermaritzburg and literally sit at home and really think, where do I want to go? It was at that stage that I got invited to a workshop, I think. And at this workshop, there were about 50 teachers. It was a workshop at a private school in Durban. And these teachers were basically having a conversation about some of the challenges they face with learners and learners absconding and how drama is not being taken seriously as a subject. And I happened to be invited there as sort of as an artist to talk about some of the work that we do and how we can help drama teachers. But I was actually attending that workshop with a group of artists that I was traveling with, that I was trying to do these plays at the Bat Center with. So as I sat there, I got an opportunity to speak to this panel of teachers, and quite incidentally, I ended up fighting with these teachers because my argument was you shouldn't be blaming drama learners for not being interested in the subject. You should be finding ways to make the subject exciting. You should be finding ways to make the subject engaging.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
that turned
Yeah.
into a
Yeah.
very messy debate where some teachers were interrupting me. I was fighting back. I mean, I was a little bit wet behind the ears. But after that, I offered quite boldly to all the teachers that I'm willing to do a workshop for any school that is willing to invite me to really prove that I can offer this value that I was speaking about. And one of the teachers, who happened to be a businesswoman, was this Muslim lady who was very interested in what I was doing, but she was teaching at a school called Pambili, which is one of the schools that takes in, kids that have some. You'll find out some of them have been into prison. Some of them have been juvenile delinquents, and they literally go to that school to sort of restart. So she invited me. She said, "Come to my
Sure.
school. If you're willing to do a workshop for free, let's see what you can do." And as I was visiting that school back and forth, she sat down with me at some point, and it turns out this lady owns a company that produces sort of like uh, chemical detergents and soap and all of these things, and they own a factory with her husband. But she's a drama teacher, and she was
Sure.
really looking for a company that she could open with someone who was in the arts. So I asked her what she had in mind, and she said, "Look,
Yeah.
have you ever done set works before?" And I said, "Well, no, I've never done set work before." And we
Yeah.
ended up discussing a possible idea of me doing Waiting for Godot. And to my luck, I was actually quite knowledgeable about Samuel Beckett's and absurdism just because of my dramatic arts background. But also, there was a friend of mine that I met in university who really gave me a thorough background on Brecht. Not on Brecht, sorry, on we do Brecht now, the Caucasian chalk circle, on Beckett. So we then started working. I hired a few actors. I was still acting in the piece myself. We sort of found a rehearsal space in Pietermaritzburg. I was still driving a small car, a Micra. So I'd pick up these guys and we would go to this community hall and we would work on the piece. And then we literally were started touring. But it was when we started touring and I started seeing the kind of money that was coming in and me being able to actually pay actors that I really started saying to myself, actually, this is something I can do. And this is something that I could possibly take to
Yeah.
the next level. Unfortunately, we ended up parting ways with my business partner, but I then continued with the business and renamed it Menzi M Creations, Menzi Mbuli Creations, which is paying homage to my father's surname. But it's truly then was that we really started maturing the company. I remember in the early stages of that chapter, I even spent time with Sue Clarence, whom I think you might know, the late Sue Clarence, who is the founder and the director of the Hilton Arts Festival, which is the biggest arts festival in KZN, who worked very closely with my father
Sure.
when he was touring the world. I sat down with her to really streamline the business, to really find out how do you actually sell plays to schools, but really find a way that is systematic to work and really make this thing run like a business. So I spent a number of weeks and a number of months at her house looking at numbers and how to pay actors how to build schools, how to
Yeah.
invoice, how to run our finances. She really played a huge role in terms of formalizing the process of how to run a theater company that's based in schools. So over time, because when I started, I was literally sitting at home calling schools, cold calling schools. Um, we really started off with a small database. We had like maybe 80 schools, 150 schools. To date, Menzi M Creations has about 400 schools in our database, and this is in KZN.
Right.
This is in KZN as well as Gauteng. We are recently now being called to work in the Western Cape. So that's really the story. Yeah.
Impressive. Dope.
Yeah.
Dope. Congrats for that, man. Yeah, man. You mentioned something. I just want to sort of highlight a very, very interesting point you raised there. Is like how the company was conceptualized because you found there was a need for it. You realize you have the skills and you had a mentorship. Which is I guess for any other entrepreneur that's listening to this podcast, I think that is incredibly important, and I can speak on my as from my own background as well, because you mentioned there like finances and actually how the business gets run. Those things are as important as the product that you put out, because without that you can't actually put the product out there. And I understand that. So actually, let me just follow up on that, because you guys are operating now for about 9 years now. Am I
Yes,
correct?
that's correct, Wes. Yes. Yes. Um, we
Sure.
it's
So what's the company? So what's the company registered as?
it
Are you a private company?
it's still a PTY. It's still a PTY. I mean, it does create challenges here and there. But see, the thing is, I'm saying this proudly.
Of course.
I'm
Yep.
saying this proudly. We've been able to operate profitably without needing any funding for the past 9 years. I think that assistance that I received from Sue really helped, because the way in which we handle our finances, we really make sure that we one pay our actors from the fees that we get from the schools, and we've also got a system in which we make sure that every single show that we do covers all our costs. And it's all got to do with numbers. I mean, I can go into the details, but maybe that'll get too boring. But for us, we had to make sure.
Not for this platform. So
Well,
if you
maybe
want to talk about it, please go ahead.
so I can go into it. So when I started the business, one of the things that was perhaps the biggest challenge is, well, first, number one, and I'll answer each question. One, how do you keep paying the actors?
Yeah.
Number two, how do you ensure that every
Yeah.
single show pays for itself? So one of the mechanisms that we discovered over the years is that, one, we've got a fixed number of learners that we allow to actually watch the show before we actually confirm a booking. So I'll give you a rough estimate. So if we're doing a show on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll ask my sales manager, whose name is Bridget Kumalo, to actually make sure that on Monday we've got 150. On Tuesday we've got 150. On Wednesday we've got 150. And then if we've got 150, we have to set a ticket price that makes sure that we cover all the actors' fees. So when I speak to my actors, I've got a performance fee agreement. So I won't divulge the actors' fees in details, but just to give you a ballpark figure,
Yeah. Of
I
course. Of course.
yeah,
Yeah.
I will give Wes the actors an offer of maybe, let's say, 1,000, maybe it'll be 1,600, it'll be 1,500 per show. So then I know that if I can pay this actor 1,500 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I've got that week booked out, and then I've got a second week where I've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, suddenly I've got a fee that sort of looks a bit workable, rather than saying I've got a random show on Tuesday.
Respectable.
And
Yeah.
then, in order to make sure that the company doesn't lose, we don't book out that day unless we have 150. And that 150 has to cover all those actors at that fee, whether it's 6 actors that we've got, and we don't work with big casts, by the way. We've got a number that fits into a car. So I drive an Everest now, but the maximum number of people I'll ever be on the road with is 6. I'll never work with a cast of 20 or a cast of 15 because we can't afford to pay that amount of people.
Yeah.
And then I'll have a stage manager
Yeah.
as well
Yeah.
who will
Yeah. Makes
travel with
sense.
me. So if my total fee for the actors as well as the stage manager comes up, and again, I'm using a rough estimate, comes up to about 10,000, maybe
Yeah.
10,500, I have to make sure that I've
Yeah.
got a number of students that always covers that fee. So we've developed in our
Yeah.
agreements with the schools a minimum number. So all our clients know if you're booking at Menzi M Creations and I'm coming to your school, you have to have 150. If they don't have 150, and again, Wes, this works
Yeah.
because we've got now a whole network of teachers that have been working closely with us. If a teacher says, I've only got 20, what we do
Yeah.
is that we then say, okay, fine, how can we team up with another school? And then another school will bring another 50, and another school will bring
Oh.
another 70, and then we then make up that number.
Yeah.
But it's important
Yeah.
for us to make sure that when we sign a contract with our actors, we always, and we've never not paid our actors what we've agreed on, that we always make sure we pay our actors what is due. And then we always use the
Yeah.
profits to then pay for the rights, because we always call Daryl and find out how much do the rights cost. And then we'll always use a lot of that money for savings. So we'll put that money aside, find out what next play a cost for us to do. And then we also have to be very careful from the profit as well. If the actors need to travel to, for instance, last year they traveled to Mpumalanga. They also traveled with Waza Albert. They traveled up to Joburg, I think, briefly to do a few Curo schools. I had to have in my inventory at least a budget of about 50,000, 60,000 to pay for S&T, to pay for accommodation, to pay for breakfast as well. I think they also hired a car last year. So it really is a functioning business, Wes. And I'm not just crediting myself. I had people mentoring me along the way to really help me to think that way, because I'm an artist. I'm always thinking performance. I'm always thinking creative. To really make that. And then what we've done, just 2 more things I want to just add before I tie up that point.
Please, go ahead. Go ahead.
So what I decided to do is my business partner was always thinking in black and white in terms of how to deal with the actors. She was always thinking, how do we get a team of actors that will perform in these plays? But I was always clear that I want to almost create an ensemble theater group that works together, but that would give us the kind of experience where we don't have to hire new actors. And I think that might have been inspired by the work that my father did with Nicholas Ellen Bogan when he was working at the Loft. They had a team of actors that were.
There we go.
Hey, Wes.
Sure, my brother. Man, these things happen all the time. So don't stress it, King. And besides, I'll cut that. I'll edit it out. So, you were busy explaining about which is great. Just by the way, on how you guys were managing the budget. Moving with your ensemble to Mpumalanga. You're talking about the cars and so forth. Do you want to pick it up from there, or do you want to move on to the next question?
Yeah, no. Could I? Because I think this is very important to mention, Wes.
Yeah.
So this is also coming from. I remember attending a workshop, and there was this gentleman who works for youth businesses in KZN, and this was long before I even conceived or even thought I'd run a company. And he said, whenever you look at a vision, and in fact he used an analogy. He said, don't just see the tree in the forest, but be able to see the whole forest. Because very often, sometimes when you get into a business, whether you opening a podcast or you become a musician, or you're running a company, or you're in construction, sometimes you don't get to see I think because you do get so caught up in the work involved in
Oh
running a
yeah,
company, because running a company is so
I
hard.
can speak on it. No, no, continue.
You know, yeah, thanks, Wes. You don't get to see the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
So at some point, yeah, at some point, Wes, I began to look at what was happening, because yes, we were doing shows, yes, we were sort of growing to some extent, but I began to connect the dots. And one of the things that helped me to connect the dots was basically where I started. A lot of actors in our industry don't have a lot of work. But not just that. When actors graduate, I mean, I can't speak for Cape Town again, I can't speak for Joburg, but when a lot of actors graduate, they don't have, and I suppose this happens in other first world countries, but certainly in South Africa, I don't think it's the case. There isn't a company that takes on actors and sort of treats them in such a way that it gives a mentorship, internship experience where you also
Yeah.
perform, but you get paid, but you also get to tour and do different shows and sort of become part of one company where this month we're doing, I'm just using an example. This month we're doing Macbeth, and we tour with that for a couple of weeks, and then it's tools down. We spend a couple of weeks rehearsing Rosa Albert, and then we tour with that, and then somewhere towards the end of the year we're doing maybe Master Harold and the Boys. You know, to my knowledge, there isn't a company that's doing that with one team of actors on a consistent basis. So I immediately saw a gap, and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to revive what my father was a part of in the 80s, which was the Loft Theatre Company, where Nicholas Ellenbogen, who's from Cape Town, created this beautiful company that, of course, at that level, they were touring the world and they were performing in places like the Edinburgh Festival. They were doing, hot spots in America and all of that. But I thought to myself, well, how do I create a home for young actors where actors could be adopted, they could stay with the theater company, become part of a family, where they can grow and not have this thing where you're doing one advert, you get a little bit of money, and then you're sitting at home, and then
Sure.
you work with
Sure.
some random director
Sure.
who doesn't even care about your talent.
Sure.
So the way I
Sure.
run my company, Wes, is
Sure.
I run it like a theater company that adopts actors. I work with the same actors
No.
for the duration of
No.
the year. If we're doing three different plays, all those eight actors will become part of those three different plays. And in the progression of the play, I've also got a mechanism in place where if one actor, because we've recently got two young actors that have joined as newbies, if you join the company and you begin to grow, if you were playing a cameo or if you were playing a supporting role, in year number three, I then graduate you and say, listen, we're doing Sophia Town. I'm just using random examples. We're doing Sophia
Yeah.
Town.
Yeah.
How about this time you play a principal role?
Yeah.
And you begin to see all these different gaps. Even within the company now, I began
Yeah.
to identify ways to make the company run more efficiently. So, for an example, whereas when I was running the company, you would know this as a businessman. I was doing almost everything. I was driving, I was doing the calls,
Yeah.
I was writing the invoices, I was
Yeah.
performing on
It's
stage.
a lot of work.
You get off stage, you answer a call, you have
Yeah.
to write an invoice. Sometimes do it on
Emails.
your phone. So about a year ago, we were able to hire for the first time a sales manager full time, who basically helps carry that burden. So she deals with the calls. We've also got like a company phone that has all our clients, where you don't speak to me directly, but you speak to Bridget.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I've also got an administrator. My mother works as an administrator in the company because she's retired from government work. She used to work for the Department of Education at National. So because she's got an administrative background, we pay her a small fee to do the invoices, the confirmation letters, to draw up any documents that I need. So I'm really in the privilege now, where yes, it costs me more money. I will admit, I'm not getting as much money coming to me directly, but me paying for people to do that extra work gives me
That's
time to really think, where's the company going? You know, so the vision of the company is that, whereas is it's not, we're not just doing schools, but we're creating a platform where actors can truly have a home where they can grow, they can discover themselves, they can become part of an ensemble. They can work with a director who's concerned with how is each actor growing, you know, how is each actor being challenged to such an extent that when they leave, they come in perhaps with no experience, but hopefully they leave with a little bit of a CV, you know. And I'm very proud of that. I'm really proud
yeah, you should be.
of that part of my journey, because I feel as though, you know, people aren't paying much attention to that in our field. And I'm not blaming anyone. I just felt that was my responsibility. I felt like if I could create this, I'm literally creating whereas something that I wish I had when I was coming out of
Yeah,
university, you know, because
yeah,
we never had
I can
that.
relate to that. I can totally relate to that. This is Menzi, this is fantastic, my brother. This is great. Like what I absolutely love is how you sort of mentor each artist and you sort of grow them within the company, giving them experience, giving them the tools to work with. And you mentor them on a long-term basis. That is fantastic. Because my understanding is, if and when they do leave the company, they can possibly go and open up their own, or they can grow and expand. That is fucking great, and that adds to the creative industry. And
Mm,
just the
mm,
last point, and I have to mention this, you were mentioning of like wearing multiple hats, but now that you have some of those things covered, you can now focus on your own work. That's actually almost a privilege that is not that not many creatives have access to, because you did mention, doing multiple tasks. And again, I can speak on that, because you sort of get lost in the mundane run around of trying to make this work and trying to make this work, that you don't really have like a bird's eye view, which is actually a privilege, and that is great because you work towards that. So this is the platform to sort of champion those type of those type of companies. And thanks for sharing that with us. So I mean, with all of this, well, I mean, you did win. This is in 2025, the Hollywood Bets Youth Business Award. Tell us a little bit about that. What was it like winning, and what does it mean to Menzi M Creations, and how will it grow the company?
yeah, it's a huge milestone, Wes, and I appreciate us concluding with this with that highlights, because it's actually my wife that sort of goes. She works in the company as well, but she's the one that forced me to apply, because I just thought, and really honestly, because we've never won an award as a company, I just never even considered anyone giving us an award for the work that we were doing. But she literally said, "No, baby, I think you should. We're doing this. Give me all the details." There was a whole lot of things they wanted. They wanted like
Yeah,
a background,
yeah,
profile. What are we doing? Numbers,
yeah,
banking letters, and all of that stuff. And literally, whereas
yeah,
I wasn't doing it with the intention of winning. It's literally my wife who was, I mean, and she's always the person who's pushing me, but she was the one who pushed it in that direction. And then we also got invited, and I went there reluctantly. I'm not a, I mean, the last time I went to an awards event, I think was uh, when I won the Naledi Award in Joburg. But even there, I was sort of like, it's not my kind of
yeah,
spaces.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I went there,
yeah,
she dressed me up by force. We bought an outfit. I did, like, really,
yeah,
Wes, I didn't want to go. I
yeah,
really didn't
yeah,
want to
yeah,
go.
yeah.
And even when we were there, I literally wanted to get through the whole thing very quickly. It's just like, no, we have to go over there and stand on the red carpet and take pictures. And everybody wanted to go there and take pictures. I literally just wanted to just walk in and walk out. So,
Walk out.
and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah. I can relate. I can relate.
and I didn't even prepare a speech, and we were sitting there, and people were winning awards, and I was just sitting there, just looking at my drink. And then and then our category came up, and then they called my name, and literally it's like everything froze. I was like, did they just call? Did they just call our name? And my wife is like, go up and speak. So we went up there, and and I don't struggle to speak in front of people, but I must
Yeah, you're an
admit,
actor.
because I was very
Irony.
unprepared with, yeah, my speech was like literally all over,
Uh,
I didn't know who to thank, and all of that, but you know but wait, just to tie it up, I mean, winning that award was amazing, because as part of the award, we received a couple of things. One of them was, the next day, they booked us in for a business breakfast, with the founder of the awards ceremony. And we were being driven out by BYD. There's a new car brand that's just come to South Africa called BYD Build Your Dream. I think it's from China.
okay.
So we were driven out from the Hilton Hotel. We were driven out to Mhlanga, no, to Balito, to have breakfast. And as we were sitting around the circle as the winners, everybody got an opportunity to do like a brief presentation of their
Sure.
company. And,
Sure.
and that's where I was more sort of organized in terms of my speech. And they were all laughing at me because everybody was there. It's like, no, this time I'm prepared. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and and afterwards, I don't know if you know Hollywood Bets, Wes, but they're like a
Yeah, I'm
huge,
familiar with the company.
yeah, they're a huge national company, and they do all kinds of things, that relates to part of them giving back. They work with schools, they work with disadvantaged communities. One of the representatives from the company was actually there during the pitch, and literally said, guys, as part of the award, which we didn't know, is that they are offering a check, and part of the money from that check to each winner is to cover any kind of equipment that you guys want to buy, whether it's laptops, or in our case, I would say a camera, because we're always thinking we want to buy a camera
Yeah.
to document
Yeah.
some of the stuff we're doing. So
Yeah.
so so they're actually in the process of meeting those needs, paying for those things. As much as it's not hard cash, they literally ask you what are the things that you want, your company needs,
Yeah,
whether it's
but that's
branding
great.
things,
Yeah.
but it's great stuff, and they pay for that. And then the second part of the award was a cash, sort of like cash prize money from I think it was 20 something thousand, which they'll pay in sometime towards the end of this month, to sort of support the business. So
Sure.
so for me, it's it means more to me than winning a theater award. I mean, winning a theater award is amazing. It's incredible, and it's an honor, because that's your fraternity giving you a salute. But this award, for me, is slightly more meaningful, because we now get to engage with companies like Hollywood Bets that can sort of help us to
Yeah.
get
Corporate, bro.
tangible things.
Yeah. You actually
We want
to
we
more
want
funding.
tangible things.
Yeah.
We want tangible things,
Absolutely.
as you know. So for me, it did two things as I close. It for me was it really boosted my confidence, because when you run a company, as much as I'm talking about all the wins, you would know as a businessman, we've gone through a lot of setbacks.
The
We've
losses
had
is
people leave our
substantial.
company.
Yeah.
We've experienced a lot of losses. We've made the wrong business decisions. But I think the
Mm.
reason why my wife wanted me to apply is to just give ourselves a pat on the shoulder if we win, to say we are doing good work, we
Mm.
are adding value to the community. And then the second thing is, hopefully we will find ourselves being supported by these corporate brands, because I feel like what we're
Yeah.
doing is important. But as soon as these brands support us, it will hopefully, certainly the way that I think, And I would fight for that to be the reality. Is I hope that these corporate brands will help us with to pay our actors more money to help us empower more schools. There's a lot of schools where that want to watch our shows, but they can't afford to watch our shows. It's getting these big brands to sponsor those shows, because we can't do those shows if those schools don't pay. So how do we get to the rural areas? And lastly, how do we turn, which is my biggest dream, how do we turn Menzi M Creations into a national footprint company? Those are one of the goals we see, like 8 years or 6 years or 7 years down the line. So it's a big thing. It's a big thing for us.
Nah, man, congratulations, my brother. Like that is the big thing there again, and I'm speaking from experience here, is for an outcome to be recognized by corporate South Africa. That is fantastic. And then supporting with equipment, and then obviously investing. It's going to open up doors. That is fantastic. So I mean, like with what you're saying, 2026 looks like it's going to be a good year for Menzi M Creations.
We hope so, man. We hope so. We always hoping so. I mean, every year we get new challenges. And, you
Yeah,
start off nicely, and then we experience a loss or a miscalculation, or things happen internally. But I think that should be normal, I guess, to any
yeah,
organization.
that's
Um,
normal for everyone, even me.
yeah, I just hope that we grow from that.
So, like in wrapping up, my brother, man, is there any highlights coming? Anything that we can look forward to in 2026? And if there's any actors or people who want to reach out to you, find out more about the business, find out about more. If there's any schools, teachers, or people working within theater that wanna reach out to you, how do they do that? And yeah, is there any touring that you guys want to do this year? Or any highlights?
Yeah, thank you, Wes. If there are any schools or educators that are watching this that want to engage with us, they can always send an email for bookings. We also do workshops. We do physical theater workshops. We do movement workshops. But if there's any schools that want to book, they can send an email to Menzi Kwane Creations. I don't know if you can leave it on the link or somewhere. I can send it to you, Wes.
Yeah,
But
you know what you can do
Menzi,
there? Just text me the thing, and I'll put it in the description box below. Yeah, but
yeah.
continue.
Yeah. So thank you, Wes. They can send it to our email, menzimquanticreations at gmail.com. Wes will tag the
Yeah,
email. Um,
I'll definitely do
but
that.
I don't want to talk too much about the new set works that we're bringing up, because we're busy currently negotiating with Delro. But we are
Okay.
picking up our big production of the Caucasian Chalk Circle. But one of the highlights, I think, for me is, for the very first time, and I'm a little bit nervous about it. I'm going back, because whereas I've spent the past 7.5 years, 8 years, purely trying to build this business,
Mm.
and doing nothing else, just trying to build this business and get it on its feet. But I think I've sort of moved away from creating plays. I've moved away from putting on plays for the public, and really trying that out again. So I'm going back to that for the very first time. And one of the pieces that I'll be doing at the end of the year is a piece that I did a couple of years ago, which was sold out in Durban. A love story called Tolutando, which I'm doing with a Xhosa ballerina actor who lives in the Eastern Cape, and one of our senior actors in the company, as well as a musical director. It's actually a musical. It's a musical love story set in the Eastern Cape, and then transitions to Durban. And I'm really excited about that. And I'm not doing it as a big thing. I'm doing it as a starting point at our creative space at the Bat Center. We're doing it for the public, but I'll start talking about it, sending a trailer, doing a poster. But this is the first of my sort of return, first installation of
Yeah,
my
I get
return
you. I
to
get
performing in the public, because I'm getting the space and the gap to do that.
you.
But I'll be doing that probably like once a year. We are looking at probably next year doing probably the same play. maybe in one of the spaces in Durban, in Joburg, it might be pop art. We might try some of the
Yeah,
space. I mean, I'm talking to Bridget as well,
yeah,
to try and find out what is a suitable space. But I want to get back into that because I feel like I've been so focused on running a sustainable company that I've lost touch with my first love. And but perhaps in closing, what I also think is exciting about doing it now is that I can use the platform that I've created to feed actors into whatever project that we do. I'll be using these actors again. I'm not going to be using outsourcing any different actors. We'll have a time in the year where we're working on our set works, and then we're going to then prep for our one public show. I'm looking forward to that. It's called Tolutando, which means finding love, and it's not a heavy play. It certainly does have elements of drama and morality and questioning, but it's a medium scale musical, with a keyboard player, and it just tells a story about this young girl who grows up in the Eastern Cape, who has this dream of joining an international company based in Durban, and she goes through a whole lot of twists and turns where she has to realize that is life in South Africa about finding fame and fortune and materialism, or is about really being connected with yourself? Because in this industry, we lose ourselves when we chase, getting on screen, becoming success. What does success mean? What does being successful mean in contemporary South Africa? Does it mean being the most successful podcaster? Does it mean becoming a millionaire company owner? Does it mean becoming the most famous actor? I think there aren't any theater pieces that really question what is the South African dream. We talk about the American dream, but what is the South African dream, and what does it mean to be successful in South Africa today? Does it mean materialism? Does it mean losing yourself in the process of gaining these material gains? Or is it about being in touch with yourself and protecting that? So in a musical way, we're kind of exploring that. I'm excited about that.
I love that. What is the South African dream? I think I'm going to use that as a tag for this episode.
Yeah.
Menzi M Creations speaks about what is the South African dream. That's dope. I love it. I love it. That's actually a perfect way
Thank
to
you.
end. Last question, my king. Social media
Mm.
handles. Where can we find you online?
Yeah, I'm easy to find. And again, Wes, I want to thank you for such an exciting, vibrant, and I
Thank you,
love
my
the way
brother.
you
I
ask
enjoyed it.
questions and the way you it's
Thank
it's
you.
beautiful. It's
Thank
literally
you.
one of the best interviews I've had. I'm easy
Thank
to
you.
find,
I'm
and I
glad.
directly, hey.
No, no, no. Thank you, my brother. I appreciate the shout out.
No, true, man. And you're running a beautiful platform. Your
Thank you.
content is amazing, and it's the kind of content that every single artist should watch, and every single fan of the
Thank you.
arts should watch. I'm on TikTok at Menzi M. I'm on TikTok. I'm also on Instagram as Menzi the Art Maker. But if you're looking for Menzi M Creations, you can find us at as Menzi Mbuli Creations or Menzi M Creations on Instagram, on TikTok, as well as Facebook. So we're on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and our handle is Menzi M Creations or Menzi Mbuli Creations.
Okay, just to my listeners, I'll definitely add all those social media handles in the description box along with the bookings email address. I did write it down, but my handwriting is not always the neatest, and even I struggle to read it sometimes. So if I get stuck somewhere, I'll just drop you a text. My
Not
brother,
a
thanks a lot,
problem.
man. This was comprehensive, and I enjoyed every single second of it. There's so many highlights here, so many, so many. But I think the biggest highlight for me is because I talk to I talk a lot to entrepreneurs within the art industry, and your business model. I love how you work with the actors. How you work your finances, how you grow your actors. Also the grassroots level, working with schools is fantastic. And the award, because now more money is always it's
Hopefully.
yeah, yeah, and also to be recognized by corporate South Africa as an art company is fantastic. There's another company, I'm actually good friends with them as well. They're on a similar trajectory as you are, and I find that thing great. I love talking to them, and this is definitely the platform for that. So, just in closing, I shall publish this episode in next week. I'm not too sure when. I'm still recording. Still got a few more recordings before that, but I will be communicating with you with that, and I also publish shorts, but I'll also be communicating that with you. Yeah, but it will probably be by Wednesday, Thursday, um, there and thereabout. But yeah, I think that concludes everything. Thanks for taking the time. This was great, man.
Thank you so much, Wes. And thank you for your kind spirit and your open mind and just your intelligent way of, hosting your guests. I look forward to the interview. I can't wait to see
No,
it.
thank you.
And really wish you the best with your platform, man.
Yeah, fantastic, my brother. It's Saturday, so enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And we'll be in touch. Take care, my brother. One love. One love.
Take care. One love, one love.